The assumption basically was, just to be clear, that my child needs his ass kicked in order to behave better.
My wife is always like preaching like presence with the kids.
Man's job is to be present. You got to be tougher on your kid. No, listen.
Right.
Listen to what they're telling you. This is too big a job for us to get perfect. Then not only are you going to screw up your kids, you're also going to screw up your relationship with your kids. Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Eli Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more. More from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. You hear that, Ryan? Episode 100.
Oh, man. It's a beautiful thing. We're there.
We're where?
We're there. We're at 100.
Just getting started.
Yeah. Here's to another 100,000.
Episodes.
Yeah.
That's not episodes. We'll have to get other guests as well. But it's been cool to see how it's changed and evolved.
Yeah, first started just all audio, and now we got the video element, bringing in more guests, sharing the message. It was good.
So I wanted to do something a little different for this one. Not much different, but you know, I used to piss people off when I shared certain stories. Not on purpose. I was just sharing my story. Like, I was sexually abused, and then, you know, parents and siblings and community members, well, don't you realize how that makes us look? I'm just sharing my story. So I'm going to share a story from last week. We'll see who we upset.
Here we go. Oh, baby.
So it's been going on for a little bit with my son Samuel. He's 4.5. And every once in a while he goes full terrorist mode. And you know, it'll look different. Sometimes we hitting one of the other kids or sometimes yelling at us. He's the, you know, King Samuel. He comes in, and Samuel's not who I'm going to get upset. He's going to be cool with this even later in life. But, you know, he can flex sometimes.
Right. And
it can look different in different ways. And we were in California vacation, and he was acting up a lot. Like a lot. And we have family, my wife's family there. And they're coming to me, you got to discipline. Come to me and my wife, you got to discipline your kid. You got to show him who's boss. You got to let him know this is what happens when you don't discipline kids. You got to. And I won't say it got to me all the way. It got to me a little bit. And
got to you how?
Some of it got to me in sense of a little bit of embarrassment. Like, hey, I haven't figured this out. This kid is walking all over me. And some of it got in the way I spoke to him differently, like, you know, with a little frustration. Like, kid, like, wake up.
Right.
Hello. You know? Right. So, like, one of the things he'll tell me sometimes, he's like, Daddy, can I watch a video or play video? So I said, I don't think your mom wants you to do that, but you're the boss of this house. Like, you don't really believe that. You believe you're the boss of this house.
Right.
That's what's really going on. Anyway, so we're dealing with this for about 3 days. And there's a lot of pressure coming at my wife over this. A lot, you know, especially from her family. And you don't know what's going to happen to him. You know what's going to turn into. This is where the worst created, like pressure. And then one day she calls me. We were doing a charity event last week, and she was busy preparing for that. So she wasn't with the kids as much as she normally is. And she's like, Ellie, I think you need to spend some one-on-one time with Samuel. So I said, I'm in. So the next morning, I took him to Santa Monica Pier, took him to the arcade place, took him to there's like a little amusement park there, and we just hung out. And I noticed during it, nothing, zero, not a one.
No tantrums, no.
Nothing. Not a tantrum, not a mini tantrum, not even nothing. None of the flexing or whatever it was that was
didn't have to talk
going
him
on
twice.
Before. None of the frustration. No, he was thrilled. You know, and you know, running through the arcade place, and at some point in time, which I didn't even know he could get, I don't want to play this game anymore. We never allowed it to even get to there. And then at some point, hey, I want to go back home, and we did that. And since then, he's been just a breeze. And I'm like, man, how many kids are effed up because parents got this one wrong? You got to be tough on the kids. It's
man.
Crazy.
But here's what I want to ask you about that, because I got kids of my own. I got a 4-year-old also and a 7-year-old. And the biggest thing, one of the challenges I face in, with that is that balance between, and this is the question, how do you make that balance between discipline and like consequences? Meaning, for me, like, I want my kids to understand consequences. When it comes to disciplining my kids, I kind of butt heads with my wife sometimes.
In what way?
So, like,
we're going to piss everyone off.
Yeah, we're going to piss everyone off for this one. So, something that happened a few days ago was he was on his phone with his cousins. They're playing a game together, my 7-year-old, Roblox, right? And they're talking to each other, they're playing, and I asked him to do something. And like, he was in the game, he didn't listen. I asked him again, he didn't. So I just went and I grabbed his phone, right? And I'm like, go do whatever. And he looked at me, and then my wife was like, he's on the phone with his cousin, you're embarrassing him. And, she pulled me off to the side and she was telling me, and I'm like, that's ridiculous.
I think she's right, but go ahead. Say more.
In that moment, I'm like, why am I going to cater to 7-year-olds every single need? Like, excuse me, 7-year-old, can you please, for the 5th time, go do it? Like, no, like, there's got to be some sort of like discipline, some sort of like action, consequence to you not doing something. So for me, it's been not the easiest trying to find that balance between like when the discipline, like what does discipline look like, and like the consequence of them, like teaching them consequences, kind of like more like let them learn kind of thing.
Right. So first of all, this is like very, very new to me because I'm just having my first, like, I have 3 kids, 4, 3, and 2.
Right.
It's just now that I'm starting to deal with some of these things. So you have much more experience than I do in this regard. But there's like the lesson for me from last week is more from that. And within the last week, there was an example where I had to give consequences, and I'll share with you how I went about it. But it was more, it wasn't so much about structure and discipline with all children need. It was the toughness that they wanted to see. Ellie, you're being too soft. At one point he his thing, he's like, bad daddy, and I thought it was the funniest thing in the world. It's like, say that. So I laughed. You can't laugh when he laugh. You got to let him know his boss.
Yeah.
Like, so what should I do? Like a right uppercut, or like a left?
Right. And this, you said this is like family members. So do you see them modeling this type of parenting in like their own, assuming they have kids?
Right. One does. One, right.
It'd be interesting if they didn't have kids in there.
One doesn't.
Nice.
Right.
Nice.
I said that at one point. I said, "Oh, how does this work with your kids? How's this working out?" But
right, no.
But one said that's not the reason I'm bringing this up. I'm not bringing it up to bash on him. I'm actually bringing it up because it got to me. Mm-hmm. Like, for a couple of days, I was acting differently as a result, and thankfully, my wife snapped me out of it. Sounds like your wife was snapping you out of something too,
right?
And just said, "Hey, spend some time with him." And 3 hours just alone, me and him, and seeing a shift. That being said, when we came back from California, there was a little bit of a tantrum before dinner, first night. And I said to him that as a result, he can't play. I said, if he does something, then he won't be able to play this game he wanted to play. He likes Minions.
It's crazy.
Minions game. So, can I play Minion? I'm like, I can't hear about Minion. My dad was screaming about Minion my whole childhood. Minion in Hebrew is prayer. Like, I got my dad screaming Minion, my kid screaming Minion. What's going on?
Right.
My dad would be proud, but he won't know the reference necessarily.
You think you
Anyway, a Jewish joke.
A little yellow.
But
yellow creatures.
Right. It's not Minion. I'm going to Minion means I'm going to the synagogue to pray.
Right.
Minion means number, and it references 10 people the number of people who pray together is 10.
Gotcha.
So Minion. Anyway, so I told him if he does something, I don't remember what it was at that point, then he won't be able to play that night. So he ended up doing that, and then after he ate, he was fine. He was in a much better mood, and it was clear he was acting up a little bit because he was hungry. So that night after he bathed and everything else, he's like, "Can I play Minion?" And I said, "No, we had already said." He's like, "Please, one more chance." So I said to him, I said, I used to give one more chance, but you're 4.5 now, you understand. So sometimes no more chances. So if you're cool about it, then tomorrow morning we'll play. So there was a consequence without any of the harshness.
Right.
And he cried and got a little angry. And I understood. Like I would do the adult version of crying too if I didn't get what I wanted.
Right. You told him you understand why he's crying. And how did he respond? Because that's something that I try to do also. Like I try to be like, hold space for my son specifically. He's a little older, like his emotion, like when he's disappointed, like I try to, like I get it. I understand why you're disappointed. And how did that work for Samuel?
He still cried. I mean, I wasn't, you know, he still cried. But at the end of the night, you're good. We were good. And he went to sleep. And the next morning, we played the Minion game.
And just listening to you talk about spending that day with him and how everything, you know, all those issues kind of melted away, makes me think about like my wife is always like preaching like presence with the kids. And I wonder, and maybe we can throw this to the viewers that are watching this, like, you know, drop some feedback in the comments. I wonder if some of that friction comes from lack of presence, even if it's an hour, a day, or a week, or whatever. So when you then step in, now you're being present, right? And you're coming with a force, like, do this, whatever. They're like, no. Like, who do you think you are? No way.
When you say presence, you mean?
Meaning like present in with your kids, engaged.
I'm 100% there. I'm not.
Right. Because when you took them to the Santa Monica Pier, you're there. You're 100%.
Right. I was the only parent there, right? I was 100% there. And there's not even
because I see it with my kid
a minute
also.
On my phone.
I see it with my kid also. Like when we're locked in and we're like engaged, like there's no friction between me and him. Like everything's a breeze. He's cool. He's chill. And more so like when I kind of come off of my perch and like, hey, go take a shower or whatever, sometimes it's like I got to say it 2-3 times. So I wonder if there's a connection there, you know, like subconsciously even like.
Yeah, 100%. I think we should do a separate episode on this. I think that's a man's job is to be present, both for in the world, is to be fully present, fully engaged. Like that's our challenge. That's our struggle, is to be fully present. To parallel that with women, I think their struggle is to surrender, to give in. I think it's sad. And these aren't my thoughts. There are others, but it's definitely, you know, there are the thoughts that resonate and the thoughts that don't. And this one did. And man, like that's the struggle, is to be fully present. And that's not only the struggle for us, it's the desire from the people closest to us. What my wife was saying was that my son acting in that way was his way of expressing a need that wasn't met. And I think what that need is that as he gets a little bit older, my two youngest are kind of playing with each other a lot. They're kind of at the age that they have the same interests. And that was different 6 months ago.
Right.
Or a year ago, where my youngest wasn't even walking and him and my second child were playing a lot.
Right.
So I think feeling somewhat alone in his interests, what he's able to do now and what he's interested in doing and what my younger children are able to do and interested in doing are very different.
Right.
So having that for me for a few hours was, hey, the stuff I'm interested in, I can do, and I'm not alone. Right. Yeah. I think that's where some of that frustration was coming from. But assuming that the assumption basically was, just to be clear, that my child needs his ass kicked in order to behave better. That was the one side of the argument. And the other was that he's expressing a need. And if I address the need, he's expressing the need in the language that he has, which may look like throwing something hard across the room.
Right.
And addressing the need, I saw it in front of my eyes. He's a different kid this week. My wife keeps saying he's a different kid. And we did not listen to the other voice. And what it made me think is how many parents over the years have listened to that other voice, and how many people have been that other voice saying, you got to be tougher on your kid. No, listen.
Right.
Listen to what they're telling you, and assume that there's a need not being met when they're acting up. This is not saying let them walk all over you. Of course not. That's why I shared the other example. But certainly to assume that it needs power and force in order to get over it. No, it needs, like you said, presence.
Yeah, I agree. And parenting is an interesting rodeo, man, for lack of a better word. Teaches you so much. The challenges sometimes feel like foreign to me, you know, like how do I deal with this? But I think something that also happens is and we have to be aware of is our own stuff that we're often I feel like it's almost easiest to project our own mess onto kids.
For sure. And we're going to. I was watching a video yesterday. I think her name is Dr. Shafali. She's a parenting. I think she wrote about conscious parenting or something like that. She's like, you're going to screw up your kids. Like, that's a given. Like, just get off the idea that you're not going to. No
matter what.
Right.
Something is going to be.
Of course, we're all going to let each other down in one form or another. Something's going to happen at some point, and they're going to be, we're not perfect, and we're going to screw them up at some point. What I said was, if you don't embrace that, obviously not to do it more than you're going to, but if you don't embrace that this is too big a job for us to get perfect, then not only are you going to screw up your kids, you're also going to screw up your relationship with your kids.
Yeah, that lands.
And one thing this has me thinking about is, this is the mother lode of the work, is parenting and in relationship. And we'll start talking more about that, some of the relationship stuff, because I don't usually start talking about something until I start working some of it out. But the biggest struggle for me in the last couple of years has been within my marriage, within my relationship, is figuring out how to navigate that. And it's in that the real work is done. How many people have I heard blame their spouse in some way and say, oh, you must be the issue because I'm cool with my friends like me, and you just have a hard time with me. Your friends don't share a life with you. It's not a good parallel.
Right.
It's not an accurate parallel at all. And I've heard it so many times. I've heard it used on me. I've used it on others. Maybe not verbally, but in my mind. Oh, right. It must be them. Why? Because your friends who you spend, 8 hours with a week in a relaxed and fun environment, they're cool with you. And your business partner has what to say about you. And the person you're sharing a life with, your wife, has what to say about you. And your kids have what to say about you. And you want to compare it to your friends who like you and think you're cool? Sure.
Yeah.
But that's not where the real work is at. The real work is in those closest relationships. That's where we find out where we are and what we are. We did the episodes with Gabor and Daniel Mate.
Yeah.
And everyone listens to Gabor Mate and says, man, this guy's freaking awesome. I wish he were my dad. Except for Daniel Mate.
His son.
Meaning, not that he's thrilled and they're doing amazing work together. I went to a workshop with them where Daniel and Gabor did a workshop called Hello Again on adult, child, and parent relationships. And one of the things that I got from Daniel so much was that he cares about this relationship. A lot of us have given up on that relationship. For him to care and to continue working through that. But the point I was making here was that for Daniel, it wasn't this obvious, like, oh, my childhood was amazing. Gabor Mate was my dad. And no, he has a ton of good ideas and he has a lot to teach us, but he has a lot to teach himself also. And that's the case with all of us. Just because I do this doesn't mean I figured out anything. There's a moment in time where I feel like in this part of my journey, I'm standing on a little bit of a hill and I can see the path. So I say, okay, let me speak from that perspective. But that doesn't mean I'm always there, and that doesn't mean I'm there on everything. Of course not.
Right. I'm curious, after spending time with your son on that day, did you go back to the voices, the talking heads that were telling you what to do and give them an update on how things were going?
No. People
just kept it moving.
Learn. That's not the risk with giving me bad advice. The risk with giving me bad advice is it ends up right here and gets blasted out to the world, and you will know it was bad advice and tell everybody else.